Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Next is Post Credits on Bat.
Hello, and thank you for sticking around post credits. I'm Ben Staunton, and here with me is, as always, is Corinne Kirk, and we are kind of at a different location today. And the reason is because we had to expand. We had such excitement about this topic today that we needed to bring in, well, some experts and talk to us about what they're doing today. So we have Seth, Courtney, and Heather, who are going to be here with us talking about, well, small town monsters. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you tell us about what Small Town Monsters is? I know that you guys do documentary work focusing on local legends, lore, and cryptids.
Yes, you just nailed it. It started as a film series called Small Town Monsters, and then the same year we started making our first documentary. It graduated into becoming basically a production company that focuses on those topics. In the earliest days, it was kind of myself running the show, and now we have 8 employees, and some of the crew is here in Ohio, and some of the crew is all around the country. It is a film production company where the mission is documenting local lore and making sure that those stories live on.
How did you find such a niche specific topic to focus your documentaries on?
Just my general interest in the Bigfoot topic kind of grew out of abject boredom. At the time I was working in an office space setting, and I was during the day I was doing medical billing, and by night I was like a freelance reporter for local newspapers. And I was super interested in the topic, but I noticed there wasn't a level-headed approach to the subject matter. And so I wanted to do that on film because I'd always loved film. And so I just started doing that. I thought most of what was on television at the time was centered around sort of convincing people of the existence of Bigfoot or the Mothman or whatever. And I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in the people that claimed to see these things. And sort of talking to them and getting their actual story. One thing I noticed as I was interviewing people for myself, like getting into this, is that the people that claim to see this stuff tend to be like really rational, level-headed folk. And when you would see reality TV focused on these subjects, it usually portrayed those people in a way that I didn't think they actually were. I wanted to showcase those people for who they actually are, while at the same time letting an audience kind of make up their mind for themselves as to whether or not this stuff's real.
Yeah, so your documentary is like equally about the people as it is the monsters or things that you focus on.
Definitely.
And sometimes the region as well. I know, what year was Rougarou? 2021?
Yeah, somewhere around there, 2021.
There was a documentary that we made down in Louisiana, and within a few weeks of the film being finished, there had been a natural disaster. So we were able to then basically give these people the last look at what their home used to be like before a disaster. So it is, also preserving locations as much as the stories and the people.
I was also super interested in how small rural communities were kind of embracing these stories in a way that was adding like revenue to the town. We're probably going to bring up the Mothman a lot, but the Mothman really ballooned like that. It started as this small rural legend in a small town on the border between West Virginia and Ohio. And Jeff Wamsley, who was a local author, had kind of taken an interest in it as a kid, and then he started his own museum, and then that led to this festival, and now it's the second largest festival in the state of West Virginia. I mean, there's 30,000 people crowd into this town to celebrate their local legend, and I was really interested in that.
Now, there's certain monsters or stories that people are familiar with, like the Mothman, I would say they've had done movies about it, and there's been documentaries done. But you said Rougarou, is that the one?
Yes, Rougarou.
That one is in Louisiana?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I mean, of course, we have a roller coaster at Cedar Point named that. But can you give us like some of the less known stories that you've covered of monsters so that we're a little more familiar with maybe the ones that don't get the top billing?
The Minerva monster was like one where it was huge in the 70s. So basically, that story goes that in 1978, this family along the Lincoln Highway started encountering a upright hairy creature in the woods behind their house. And local investigative reporter Barbara Galloway from the Akron Beacon Journal came down to cover it. The story hit the AP, became huge literally overnight. There were news crews from all over the country, eventually all over the world. There were news crews that came in from Japan, Germany, and all this stuff started covering it. The story got massive. It impacted the town in this major way and then was basically forgotten until we made the movie in 2015. And it kind of brought it back to the forefront of the community's mind. The Minerva story has always been like my favorite kind of unsung local legend. The funny thing about it is like so many of those small town monster cases are Bigfoot. Yeah. I mean, it's a Bigfoot with a local name kind of put on it. So you have Minerva, you have Momo, like there's the Boggy Creek monster, the Monroe monster. Non-Bigfoot, one of my favorites has always been the Flatwoods monster in West Virginia.
I feel like that's the one that seems like it would be the most interesting to look at.
Yeah, Flatwoods?
Yeah,
it's my 8-year-old's absolute favorite. He is obsessed with Flatwoods Monster, but it's a really cool story and it's got that space age vibe to it that I love. Some of my favorites are like these stories that have disappeared at some point, or not disappeared, but just kind of faded. And that kind of plays into what I consider to be our mission, which is to make sure we capture that story as truthfully as possible, but often the biggest goal, I would say, between Heather and I would be making sure that we get some of those original witnesses on camera to tell those stories, because a lot of these stories are set from like the 50s through to the 70s, and some of the original witnesses are passing away. Minerva, that was one of the big things that drove us to make that movie. It was, we knew that, there were health issues, declining health issues with some of the people that were involved in the original case, and getting those people on camera to tell that story is a big deal.
Yeah, just last week, we were out interviewing an original witness to the Portage County UFO chase, which was 1966.
And as far as we know, she's maybe the last remaining witness still alive that actually saw it, from what we can tell.
And it was a situation where she had not shared it beyond family. But I mean, we went to a nursing home to interview her, and when she's gone, it'll live on through her family, obviously. But now we have it on film, and we'll be able to put it in one of our upcoming features, and then it will be preserved.
What do you find is the most difficult thing to do? So, for example, 1966. The technology was not there where people were walking around with phones or even VHS cameras at that time. So you don't really have footage to accompany your filmmaking. So how do you work around that?
I've never cared as much about, in fact, that was kind of part of the response. STM, Small Town Monsters, was created as a response to what was on TV at the time. And the big thing that people are always looking for is like, well, where's the footage of the Bigfoot, or where's the footage of this or that? And I was never interested in that. So it always came down to me, like, can we get the actual people who experienced this stuff on camera? Because I think witness testimony is important. The goal for me was more about capturing and documenting what people actually said happened to them. If we can get some sort of footage of like a Bigfoot or whatever, that's a bonus. But most of the time, there's nothing there. And ultimately, our goal isn't to prove or disprove any of this. It's just to document what people claim happened.
And occasionally we do, have some more historical cases where there's absolutely no one left. Like a couple of years ago, we did the Jersey Devil. Well, we can't really talk to the original people because they're long gone. So at that point, we're talking to historians. We're going through archives and seeing what's there. And then interviewing a lot of university professors and that sort of thing. But, sometimes you have to work with what you can to at least preserve what's left of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get newspaper articles. Sometimes with ones that were particularly newsworthy, you have even police reports that you can find, which kind of add, I guess, if you're looking for validity, so to speak, to these stories, that adds a little bit more, another layer for people to find interesting.
Well, and I think the thing that makes it interesting that you're doing it as documentary style is you were talking about that being more like reality television that they were doing before. They try to fill all that space with video to make it you can have people talk and tell their story for 10 minutes and people will tune in and watch that, as opposed to, not actual footage at the bottom of the screen, or, this is, computer generated, not, actual footage from the thing. You're working in a medium, I think, that draws that more and makes it easier for people to understand that, this is what happened to this person, and we don't have to have visual imagery all the time.
It's going to be interesting over the next few years too, as AI really takes off, how it impacts the documentary space specifically, because I think there's going to be an audience perpetually for documentary work, whereas fiction is probably going to take a hit with something like that. We were having a discussion today about the witness testimony being like the most important aspect of what we do because of the fact that it's real. Now, whether or not you believe that what the witness is saying is real, that's not really what I'm talking about. It's more about being able to sit down and watch someone tell a story about an encounter with something that most of America would consider crazy, and see that that person, be able to look in that person's eyes and see that they believe what they're saying is true.
And often, depending what topics we're talking about, there are varying levels of emotion behind these people's interviews, but sometimes they do get very, very emotional. We were just interviewing a UFO witness the end of last month that told a very, very long story, and at one point was crying and yelling from the emotion that, he was trying to convey at that moment. And, in the past, we've had many witnesses. I think specifically of a gentleman up in Alaska who was telling us a story that if you hadn't seen the emotion on his face, you might be like, really? But when you saw him, he was very emotionally affected by what he saw. And you can't really fake that for just, a regular man who's not an actor. Just that's his truth.
Mm-hmm. And for your research process, and how do you find the people to interview? How do you choose what topics to cover and where? How do you work through that?
So first, it depends on what case it is and the age of the case, but there's no denying that social media is a massive help. There are groups out there are pages where people feel safe to come forward with their stories, or there have been cases where people haven't felt safe enough to come forward with their stories, but if I go on the group and I see conversations, it's clear that something has happened to them, so then I'll reach out and start talking to them, and kind of get a feel for what's going on and see if they feel comfortable eventually sharing their story with us. You have newspaper articles, especially with the older ones. A lot of the newspaper articles from the 60s they will give so much information that it is absurd. They will give the name, they will give the home address. Then there's books that have been written. Sometimes, of course, a lot of the books people have pseudonyms because they don't want their names out there either. But books are another avenue. You have researchers that we work with all the time. They have their own people that come to them that feel comfortable confiding in them, and then through them, sometimes we make that connection.
Sometimes witnesses kind of
so-and-so saw the same thing around the same time.
Well, and they can form a bond with other witnesses, and then we just had someone that I know who was a witness contact me in the last week about other witnesses in the same area who he thought we might want to speak to.
Yeah, one thing that's been great about what we have created is that people are starting to notice what we do and how we do it, which has allowed them to feel more comfortable coming forward with us. So when we have a witness that we've made a good connection with, not only can they vouch for us, but they can literally look at our stuff and see that it's not reality television.
Yeah, not extra dramatized or
No.
We're not going to make fun of people. We're not going to belittle anyone. We're just trying to get the information
It's almost like a resume. And it is, you can stand out just by letting people tell their story without doctoring it. Because I do know, not to keep harping on the reality TV thing, but there really have been instances, people we've spoken to, witnesses we've spoken to, where they were like, this is my story. This show I was on literally changed everything, to suit the TV's television.
So you have seen the difference. There's people who worked with you that have worked on some other
There's documentaries we've made where you can watch that witness's interview and then watch something from TV that they were on, and it's a completely different story, or at least the one thing I know that we've been told is that witnesses have been coached on what to say, or they'll make them do take after take until they say what they want them to say.
Yeah.
So that's not something we do.
When someone sits down with us, we literally say, you tell your story how you want to tell it. We're not going to change that. If you stammer or need to start over, we'll edit your hiccup out or whatever, but we're not going to change your story.
So no creative editing to make it sound like what they're...
I mean, if someone has like a curse word in there or something, we try to take that out.
Sure,
We like to be family friendly, but we're not going to change the fabric of their story at all.
Yeah, and we also are clear that we don't own their story, because that's another thing that we've come across with people who have been involved with reality television, that they've been asked to sign some sort of waiver that the studio owns their story in that manner, and they can never speak that again, which just feels icky to me. But that's something that we don't do. We don't own anyone's story.
If somebody wanted to contact you and tell you their story, maybe you haven't heard of them or whatever, how can they contact you?
Okay, well, you've got a couple avenues. You could email me directly, which is heather@smalltownmonsters.com. You can email us as a group, contact us at smalltownmonsters.com. Courtney receives that and then distributes appropriately.
If someone's like closer to our guy in New Hampshire and it's a Bigfoot story, I would send it to him. We have a friend in Texas who does a lot of Bigfoot/Dogman stuff, so I try to distribute those, but Heather is the hub of all research, so it's never wrong to send her stuff, or our website has a contact form that comes to me as well.
Where can people watch your documentaries and see what's going on and view them for themselves?
Most major streaming platforms, I know Tubi has a lot of our stuff, Apple TV,
Amazon.
We have a YouTube channel as well where we've been focusing a lot of our creative energy over the last 3 years. We do 1 to 2 uploads there a week. But our, the ultimate goal for us is kind of far beyond YouTube. We'd like to be in as many accessible places as possible.
Roku and Fire TV, we now have an Unexplained TV app, which is our stuff that we're working with a middleman to try and get more on there. We also have an online store with physical media if you're into that, and we try to do a couple appearances every year. In Ohio, we have the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. Heather and I are emceeing it this year. Heather's usually at our table trying to talk to people and see if perhaps in person we could meet a witness or something like that. So
they are gone multiple days a month conducting interviews. Last week we
were on 3 days.
3 days in a row they were out interviewing people. So I do a lot of the editing and they do a lot of the interviewing.
Do you run the cameras and
That's me. She's as I like to say, she is the people person and I am the hold camera person.
So for advice for people who are interested in exploring documentary work or just doing the research to try and make a story out of something that is true or with people, what advice do you have for them?
Documentary is great for new filmmakers because it doesn't require a massive budget to go make something. It just you can go film stuff with your phone. And that's not relegated to just cryptid stories. A documentary is just a fantastic place to really start with filmmaking. And again, I think this genre is going to be one that lasts. I don't know how the rest of it's going to go, but I'm confident documentary is great. So just pick up a camera and go find a story that you're interested in and start following your heart, when it comes to making it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think just if you're passionate about a subject or something like that, and you're just going to go after it with sincerity, that's probably going to come through. And as far as everything else when it comes to the camera work and everything, just,
figure it out
on YouTube, see what you like, what kind of framing, what kind of documentary you like, and, just try and fake it till you make it and mimic that. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I would say talk to people. If you want to get people's stories, if you're wanting to look into things, don't be afraid to go talk to people. Even strangers, go to the library, talk to librarians. They're great connections in the community. They can direct you to some people, but don't be afraid to just ask questions.
I've definitely found that to be useful in my own life and my own shows here. Really, more people are likely to talk to you than you think.
Absolutely.
We just did interviews at a library a couple weeks ago and ended up interviewing an extra person because one of the librarians was so knowledgeable. We're like, well, actually, can we mic you and sit you down for just a moment?
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to that side of things, in the earliest days of running STM, this was pre-Heather, I found that a lot of the time it was just easier to make those connections and not even be, just to talk to people in a way that didn't even necessarily feed into the subject matter or any of that. You just communicate directly with people. And I know Heather and I have talked about this a lot. And she's like amazing about maintaining relationships. We don't like interview someone and then throw them away and move on to the next witness. Heather still checks in with like dozens of these people we've interviewed. But starting a relationship with people in a way that's like human being to human being, not like filmmaker to witness or something like that, just talking to people about their lives.
And you find that helps them feel more comfortable or you get more genuine
Well, I think
stories?
it's easy to, if you're kind, we live in a really mean world. And so if you approach people in a way with kindness, like it's not commonplace right now. And so like that alone will kind of set you apart from probably other people that they're used to dealing with.
And I always tell them, your line of sight is Heather. Forget I'm here, forget the camera's here, you're talking to her. And we'll give it a few minutes, and then once they relax, they tend to do very good jobs with their interview, and at the end it almost seems therapeutic for them.
Absolutely.
Is there a piece of your work that you find that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, we made a movie in 2021 or 2022 called The Mark of the Bell Witch, and it still is my favorite piece that I've directed. I wouldn't have expected that to be the one, just because I'm not into the supernatural, but in making that film, there was so much more to it beyond just like the haunting part of it, the history of the family that was involved. And again, that's one of those ones where there were no living witnesses. The documentary portion of it is work I'm really proud of, like the way it was shot and all of that. We did these kind of like stylized recreations to help bring it to life because it's such an old story. And I was really happy with the way those came out. Whenever I think of like something that I'm really proud of or I want to say that's my best piece of work, that's the one I always go to. The Kinderhook creature that's coming out at the end of March is one I'm also really proud of. That's one of those ones where like sometimes I edit so much that sometimes it's like muscle memory where you're not really exercising your creativity in the way you should be. That's one where like my creative muscles were working a lot and I don't quite understand how or why, but that's one I'm proud of too.
Last year, Heather and I got to have our co-directorial debut with the Monroe Monster, which was just a smaller special that we had filmed, but it was her and I on the road alone. We filmed this entire special together, and it starts off as a Bigfoot story, and in the end, it's just a really sweet story about a son who's really protective about his mom and wanting her story to come out correct so that she doesn't have to be ashamed or criticized by the town anymore. And I think that was really special. That Monroe case, we went because June of last year, there was a brand new site and we're like, it's hot, we got to get on it. And then the original witness's son decided to sit down and talk to us, and his interview, I think, changed a lot just because what his mom had gone through after, it came out that she had this Bigfoot attacker and how it affected her life and, the whole town. So in the end, that for me changed what it was about.
I don't know how to top this one as Rougarou for me, but that's purely because that was one of the first projects, like the first project that I got to be so intricately involved in. And so it's just always going to be special to me in that way. It was the first project that I got to work on where I was able to make connections with some people. It wasn't the first thing that I did with STM, but it was the first in-depth thing that I got to do, and so that just is special to me.
So before we wrap up, there's one question that I have. Since this is part of Ohio Goes to the Movies, the 250th birthday of the United States, I'd like to ask each one of you, we'll start with Heather this time and work our way across to Seth, your favorite Ohio cryptid.
So I don't really like to play favorites with cryptids or anything like that.
Okay, which one speaks to you the most that makes you...
Okay, well, we had this discussion prior. First of all, I live in Minerva, so the Minerva monster is something that's always going to be on my mind. I do appreciate, we did just film, and this isn't cryptid related, but it is still in the realm of what we do, the Portage County UFO chase, which happened in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. That's very intriguing to me. It was 86 miles that they chased this UFO into Pennsylvania. Police. Sometimes, police up to speeds of 100 miles an hour at some point. And if they lost track of it, the UFO would stop and wait for them to catch up.
That was nice.
Yeah, right? So it liked to play some games. So stories like that, basically for me, there are cryptids, of course, all over Ohio. But anything closer to home on this side of the state, I'm interested in.
Along the lines of that, we were also just filming some stuff about dogman, or what more people call werewolves. There's some splitting of hairs there. But we were just filming about the Defiance dogman, which I hadn't known much about the story prior to this shoot, but I did find it charming that he wore pants. I floated that we should call it pups and pants, and everybody shot that down instantly. But a dogman along railroad tracks wearing pants that was hitting people with
a 2x4
with sticks,
something like that.
Yeah. And then he ran away.
Well, it's nice to be decent when you're out.
Yeah, and there's only a
You don't want to mess things up.
There's only a couple cases of dogmen wearing pants.
Yeah, I guess
one of them's here, and that community's really embraced it. We did interviews in their library, and their teen librarian came over in a werewolf mask, and it was very charming. So, I mean, that's it's an older case, obviously, but it was still one that I was like, it's really cute and it's close to home.
I mean, before I say my favorite, I want to mention that in this area, there's actually a couple cryptids that are kind of cool that are probably never going to be covered because the stories have kind of died off. One is the River Styx monster, down near River Styx, south of here.
I didn't know that there was.
Yeah, those started in the 70s and ran into the very early 2000s. Right around the time, the interesting thing about that is it's right around the time, those taper off right around the time where it really starts getting developed down there. The other one is there was a Silver Creek Dogman series of reports outside of Barberton that are kind of cool. So those are two locals that I've always been a big fan of. And I love Portage County, but Minerva Monster has always been my favorite. I grew up in Bolivar, Ohio, and in Bolivar, I can remember kids when I was a kid saying, make sure you're into your house before it gets dark, or the Minerva Monster will get you. We were like 25 minutes from Minerva, but that story had seeped into Bolivar, over to Bolivar. And it's one where I credit that with my general interest in these subjects in general. And I love that family, the family that was involved in it, really rational people, good people, and very believable. And there's a reporter kind of in the heart of that story that I am a big fan of, Barbara, and I formed friendships with a lot of the people that were involved in that case. So Minerva Monster is my favorite.
Well, we'd like to thank all three of you for coming in today and spending your time with us and giving us some insight on small town monsters. And if you're out there and you have something that you'd like to share with small town monsters, I think you should give them a contact and let them know that you'd like to speak with them, because, your story is important, and they've made that clear today. Thanks for sticking around post credits, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, thanks.